next year also.
That's
Probably by next we'll be ready to probably almost done with there'll be no excuses.
right. Right. We might surprise ourselves if we finish before that.
We'll see.
Right. Good morning, Aaron. So we have the Gemaras over there. We are on Yud Testament Bays. We are on 19b. In the art scroll, we are on 19b. Let's see what we're discussing. Art scroll, it's 19b1. 19b1. On the right side, my time, my Rabbanon. About 2 paragraphs before the end of the page. We discussed if a person made a sukkah in an unusual fashion, where it's hard to see the walls. Where are the walls and where are the, what do you call it, a teepee, right?
Nice.
Where are the walls and where is the ceiling? Where is the roof? Whether that's called a sukkah, is that called a tent? Or is it not called a sukkah? If it's not, if you can't really easily discern and identify which is the walls and which is the ceiling. So we had a machlokas, the way it was presented in our Mishnah, was a machlokas between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanon. And Rabbi Eliezer in the Mishnah that we have is recorded to say that it is puzzle, that it's invalid, because it doesn't have a roof. You don't see where the roof is. And the Chachamim say it's kosher. The Chachamim say that such a sukkah, the fact that you can't see where the roof is, it's still considered a tent. It's still called a sukkah. It's still a place of shelter. It's a place of protection, and it would fulfill the requirement of a sukkah, and you fulfill your mitzvah. Now, so that's what the Gemara says. My taimayu the Rabbanon. What's the reason of the Rabbanon that the Rabbanon say such a sukkah is kosher? The sukkah that you can't identify the roof. Where is the roof? Like the other case was, one was a teepee case, and one case was when you took reeds, schach, and you sloped them against the wall. You have 2 walls on the other side, and you, like in picture on page 19b1 in number 5, where it talks about sloping. You see those reeds, you sloped it against you see that, Adam? You sloped it on 19b1, picture 5, note 5 on the bottom. You sloped it against the wall. And so you have 2 other walls, and now you're having this schach, the schach, which is standing, it's also leaning, is serving both as a wall and both as the covering and warning, and it's like the vid. So that is the issue in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, "My time, Mayo de Rabbanon." We are on 19b2, 19b1. I'm sorry. My timer. What's the reason for the Rabbanon? Just to bring the doctor up to date, we're talking about, the conventional sukkah is you have walls and you have the schach, right? You have a minimum of 3 walls. You have schach on top. What about if the sukkah is made in a way you can't really call this is the wall and this is the roof? Let's say if you look at the picture 19b1, the bottom picture number 5. You see, this is top. Here you have is that considered a good? Is that called a sukkah? Is that called a tent? You're in a tent. You're in a sukkah or not? So the Gemara is going to say that whether that's called a sukkah or not is dependent. If you have a tent that's sloped like that, is that called a tent? If it's a tent, then it's like a sukkah, then it's called a sukkah. If it's not a tent, it's not a sukkah. And there's going to be, and we'll see what the ramifications would be. So the Gemara says, "My time with the Rabbanon." What's the reason for the Rabbanan? Shipule ohalim ko'olim dami. The Rabbanan say that has a status of a tent. A tent. Now, I would suggest that the ramification should be, let's say, Adam ki yomas ba'ohel. Person passed away, and he passed away in a tent. What does the Torah say? That anything that's in that tent, right, will become tamei. There's food in the tent, there's utensils in the tent. They become tamei if they're under the roof of that tent. But what about if the tent is like that picture? Is that a tent? If it's not a tent, then everything in the picture, everything will not become tamei. So I would presume that is where that would be what we call a nafka mina. That's what will come out. If you hold it's not a tent, then everything in the tent will not become contaminated. But the Rabbanan hold, the Gemara says here, the recording of our Gemara, we're going to see a change a little later, but the Rabbanan hold that a tent that's made in such a fashion is called a tent, and therefore anything that comes into that tent will be susceptible to contamination. And also, therefore, it's called a tent, therefore you could use that tent regarding Sukkah. Okay? If it's a tent for there, it's a tent for there. Comes the Gemara. Abaye ashkechel Rabbi Yosef. Abaye saw that Rabbi Yosef, the Kagani, Bekilat Chasanim, he was sleeping in a bed that's made in a way that the roof of the bed is made not flat. When I sometimes you go, if you go to a castle, an old museum, you'll see some of the old beds that they used 500 years ago. You'll see sometimes there was a canopy on top of the bed, a flat canopy on top of the bed. But kilat chasanim, the chatanim, the bed it's used for the groom. That bed, the canopy is made on a slant. It comes to a point on the top. It's not flat on the top. It's slopey. The canopy goes slopey on both sides, like you see in the picture. You see the picture on the bottom of 19b1, picture number 11. You see, you don't see. There's no real roof. You can't identify a roof over there. There's no roof. And Abaye met Rabbi Yosef. He was sleeping in that type of bed, Succah, in a Succah. And why was he sleeping in that bed in the Succah? Now, you have to sleep in a Succah, but if you're sleeping in some other tent, if you're sleeping in this bed, and this bed has a covering on top, so that other tent should create a hefsek, should create a interruption between you and the Sukkah and the schach of your Sukkah. So why was he sleeping there? So Amalei, Abaye says to Rabbi Yosef, come on, which opinion do you hold like that you feel that this canopy of the bed of the Chatanim is not considered an interruption between you and the schach? Because you obviously hold this is not called a tent. Because if this is a tent, then you are in a tent within a tent. You're within a tent within a sukkah, and you have created a separation between you and the schach. So you hold this is not a tent, and therefore you're able to sleep in it. It's not an interruption. But which opinion holds that this is not called a tent? That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says if it doesn't have a proper roof, you are not allowed to sleep in. That's not called a sukkah. It's not a tent. See, here it's interesting. By not being a tent in the Mishnah, good morning, Max. If you're not a tent in the Mishnah, you're invalid for sukkah. Correct? You can't. If something is not called a tent, you can't create that as a sukkah. But if it's not a tent, then you could go ahead and sleep in that contraption within a sukkah, because you did not sleep in a separate tent within a tent. Max, we're on 19b1. And now, so Abaye So now, Amalei, so he said to him, Keman, the last word of the page. Who do you hold like? Rabbi Eliezer. You hold like Rabbi Eliezer. You hold like Rabbi Eliezer's opinion that says that such a sukkah is not a tent. Remember, Max, we had yesterday, if you have this teepee or you have this type of item that you don't clearly have a roof, identify a roof, we had a machlokas whether that's considered a good sukkah or not. So there was a rabbi, so the story in the Gemara today was a rabbi met another rabbi. Abaye saw that Rabbi Yosef was sleeping in a sukkah, in such a type of bed, in a sukkah. The sukkah was a perfect sukkah. No problem. No question about the sukkah itself. But he was sleeping in a bed that was made in such a fashion that had a canopy on top, but it came to a point where you don't see, there's no roof on the bed. And the fact that he slept in that bed shows you that he holds that bed is not, that canopy is not considered a tent. Because if it would be considered a tent, then you created a separation between you and the sky. So who do you hold like? Rabbi Eliezer. Now here, you see, by the way, you see a rabbi do something, have a conversation with him, try to understand what's behind and he says to him, Abaye says, wow, it seems like you're going against the rabbis. Rabbi Eliezer is a yachid. Eliezer is a minority opinion. When you have in a Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer says this, and the Chachamim say that. So who is the majority? Or now in Mishnah you have the Tanakama, which is the Stam opinion, which is no name, but that's the more common opinion, the first opinion in the Mishnah. The second, here the Mishnah clearly says the Chachamim Mashirim. The Mishnah clearly states the Chachamim say it's kosher. So the Chachamim means that's the majority opinion. Rabbi Eliezer is a minority opinion. So who do we go like majority? So how could you, Rabbi? I don't understand, Rabbi. What? It's not considered a tent. If it's not considered a tent, but who holds it's not considered a tent? Which opinion in the Mishnah? That was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that said it's not a tent. Rabbi Eliezer says that's not a good sukkah. You can't sleep in it. You can't create a sukkah that doesn't have a clear identifier roof. But that's Rabbi Eliezer. The Chachamim hold it is called a tent. Chachamim hold that you could create a sukkah, at least the way the Mishnah has it recorded at this point. The Chachamim hold it is a good sukkah, even if you don't see the roof. If it's a good sukkah, so you can't. How could you sleep in that type of bed that has that type of canopy? That means, yes, yes, we have. Yes, very good memory. Yes, we spoke about the Kiryat Chasana. Yes. So the Gemara says, "Shafkit Rabbanan." For others, Rabbi Eliezer, you left the opinion of the rabbis, majority opinion, and you go like Rabbi Eliezer, right, Aaron? Majority rules. The Torah says, "Acharei Rabim Hatot." You go after the majority. That's the general way we work. So what's going on that you are not following the opinion of the majority rabbis, and you're just following a minority opinion? And you know what could happen as a result of this? You're holding, according to the majority opinion, you're not sleeping in a sukkah. According to the majority opinion, the way it's recorded now, that it is called a tent. So therefore, you've created a tent within a tent, and now therefore you created an interruption between you and the schach, and now you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of sukkah. It's like you're sleeping outside a sukkah. By the way, you should know that really me'ika hadin, the law is that you're supposed to sleep in a sukkah. I mean, the same way you eat in a sukkah, the Gemara does not make any distinction between eating in a sukkah and sleeping in a sukkah. Nobody would think that you can eat outside a sukkah. So the commentaries in the poskim discuss why aren't people so careful about sleeping in a sukkah. So there are different answers that are offered. Some say the climate that people are living in is very cold at night. There's a law, mitzta'er potem min sukkah. If you're in stress and pain, if the situation is, it's like if it's raining and coming down, ruin your food, you don't go into the sukkah. So too, if drizzle you can handle, not a strong rain. So too, the coldness at night. But that would not be an excuse for climates that are warm at night, or it happens to be a beautiful night tonight, right? It's 70 degrees. So what's the excuse for not being in the sukkah? Some say because when you're married, if your wife's inside the house, so not being with your wife would be considered some sort of mitzta'er, distress. But there are different answers that are offered for the question. The question is the big question. And some people, what some people do is, first, some people I know in Eretz Israel, I had an uncle of mine, he had 2 sukkot, one for him and his wife, and one for the rest of the family. That he had his privacy, he had his own sukkah. His wife would come to the sukkah. Now, a wife is exempt from sleeping in a sukkah. She has no mitzvah to sleep in a sukkah or eat in a sukkah. But he wanted to fulfill the mitzvah with the sleeping on the sukkah, which, in general, I think in Israel, they're much more particular, I think, in sleeping in a sukkah than in America. I think it's much more common. When I went to Israel, right, Aaron? I went to Israel a number of years ago on Sukkot. I was married, everybody was sleeping in the sukkah. That was I said in the yeshiva world. I can't tell you, I don't know. So in the city, they did not sleep in the sukkah. David Feinstein did not sleep in the sukkah in the city. We have a sukkah right by the park, inside the park. It was, in the courtyard of the buildings. And they put up a communal sukkah, but the people in general, people did not. There's very few people would ever sleep in the sukkah outside. But it's something to think about. People should think about it a little. I doubt it, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure, but I don't know.
Once they fix these river park, we'll get back outside.
Okay. So that's something to think about. Very good. So excellent. So women are exempt from sukkah, but even though they're exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah, she gets credit, she gets reward for doing a mitzvah that she's not obligated to do. Most mitzvot that a woman is not obligated to do, she gets a lot of reward for doing it. And therefore, it's a beautiful thing for a woman to be in the sukkah, eat in the sukkah, spend time in the sukkah. She gets a mitzvah. So it depends. So it depends if she's Ashkenaz or she's Sfard, whether she'll say a bracha on sukkah. It means the same. Say if a woman says she wants to have, let's say it's chalamoid, husband's at work, and she wants to have a sandwich. She wants to have bread. And she wants to go to the sukkah. So she goes with her kids, and she has boys. Train the boys to go to the sukkah, and they, even though they're young, and she goes to the sukkah. Does she say a bracha leishiv basukkah? So if she's an Ashkenazi woman, she would say the bracha leishiv basukkah. But if she's Sfard, she will not. Why not? Because the Sfardim say there's no obligation. How can you say Asheket Shana b'misotav b'tzivana? You commanded us to sleep at the leishiv, to dwell in a sukkah, when we have no commandment. We have no commandment. The Ashkenazim say the bracha is on the Jewish community. You're saying a bracha that the Jewish community was commanded, the Jewish world was commanded, that the Jewish people were commanded on the mitzvah of sukkah. So even though you personally not obligated in the mitzvah, you could still say the bracha. It's a similar question on a lulav. Should a lady on Sukkot take a lulav on Sukkot? So of course, we should encourage the women, my humble opinion. They're exempt. They don't have the mitzvah of lulav, the time-bound mitzvah, but she still gets a mitzvah if she does the mitzvah. So if she's Ashkenaz, she will say a bracha in lulav. If she's Sfard, Rav Yosef is very strong. She should not say a bracha, but she's not obligated. You might find some women in some Sephardi communities that might say a bracha, but either they're under the Ashkenaz influence of the women, but again, I had a story. I was in a certain sukkah in, let's say, upstate. In a pizza shop sukkah, and a friend of mine from my neighborhood happened to meet me there, or some other person, I remember who he was. I said, Rabbi Freeman, could you tell me about Torah? He wanted about Torah. He was sitting in the sukkah, and the sukkah, his wife was sitting in the part of the sukkah where the schach wasn't. There was no schach. And he was sitting in the proper part of the sukkah. So I said, and the sukkah wasn't packed. It's not like the sukkah's packed and there's not enough room for the men, so if the men are on the kosher side. I said, even though women are exempt from sukkah, they get a mitzvah by sitting in a sukkah. So I think we should have the woman move over to part of the sukkah that the schach is on and let her get a mitzvah. It goes so strongly. There's a Gemara that says, what's greater? When you're obligated in a mitzvah and you do it, or when you're not obligated in a mitzvah and you do it? What's a greater task? What's a greater achievement? So the Gemara, originally the rabbi thought it's greater not being obligated and you perform it, and then he concluded, no, it is greater to be obligated and do it. Because when you're obligated to do something, there's a pressure, Joseph said. You have a pressure. It's on your mind, you're focused, you have to, you're worried that I might not fulfill my responsibility. Because of that pressure, how do you like that benefit? That pressure that you have makes it a greater task, and therefore it's a greater accomplishment when you do something that you're obligated to go ahead. Very good. That also could be a point, that there's a strong Yetzer Hara that's trying to stop you. Anything you have to do, the Yetzer Hara is trying to stop you. Evil inclination is trying to stop you. Women don't have that evil. She doesn't have to do it, so she's not fighting. She doesn't have a strong fight against the evil inclination. It's a very nice idea, also. So that's. But I strongly encourage women to. People have a sukkah. It's right next. It's right. It's right next to people have homes, or their sukkahs right there. Why shouldn't she spend time in the sukkah? She'll get a mitzvah. Maybe she won't get the same level as the men, but she'll get a mitzvah. So there's only a couple of mitzvot that women are exempt from that we tell them they shouldn't do, like tefillin and tzitzit are the two main examples. But in general, besides tefillin and tzitzit, in general, we strongly encourage women to do mitzvot that they're not obligated. If they're able to do it, why they'll get a reward for it. It's a holy thing. They're involved in a mitzvah. Take a lulav and etro. Let them take a lulav and etro. Every day they let them take a lulav and etro. Let them sit in a sukkah. That's so very good. It's a shofar that on a Torah level they're not obligated because it's a time-bound mitzvah, but it became an accepted custom. It became a custom for the women to, as if like it's an obligation. Therefore, women are very strong. They make sure they hear the shofar. There, it's not just. It became more obligatory, but great question. So why is Megillat Esther the time-bound mitzvah? So the Gemara asked that question. The Gemara says because they were involved in the miracle. So the question is, what does that mean? They were involved in the miracle. So one opinion is because the decree to destroy Jews were against the men and women equally. All the women, men, women, and children, there was a decree to kill them all on one day. So because she was saved from that miracle, so therefore she has to, therefore when the rabbis instituted Megillah, they said the women are obligated just like the men, because they were involved and saved from the miracle just like the men. And that's a similar reason that's given by Hanukkah. Women have a mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah. My mother's a widow. She lights a Hanukkah menorah. The only reason why she didn't light a Hanukkah for a number of years was my father was alive. The woman is ishto kegufo. When the husband lights, it covers the woman. The woman doesn't have to light. But when my father passed away, my mother has a mitzvah, right, to light a menorah. Because a woman has a mitzvah to light a menorah. Why is that? The same reason. Because the decrees on Hanukkah were not only just against the men, it was very tough for the women. The men, they said you can't learn Torah. What did they say about the women? They said any woman who gets married would first have to sleep with the Greek. They made the Greek person general was the decree for the Greeks that they would sleep with her first. That was one of the terrible things that they had. So they were also saved from, by the way, you should know there's an interesting midrash that one of the girls was getting married, and she said to the Hashmonayim family, "You're just going to stand by? Remember what Shimon and Levi did with Dinah? They wiped out Shem. You got to go." And then she inspired them to go to war. She said, "You can't just let it happen to me." And since she was saved, she was involved in the miracle. The women were saved. So therefore, the rabbis, when they instituted the mitzvah of Chanukah menorah, they said the women are also obligated. That is one shot. There's a different explanation that the miracle happened through them. Esther was a key player in the miracle of Purim. Yehudis, the woman who gave milk products and wine products to get the big general of the Goyim to drunk and to chop off his head. That helped the tremendous of the miracle. So therefore, since the women played key roles in the story of Purim and the story of Purim and Hanukkah, therefore they were obligated in that mitzvah. So that's and also, by the way, similarly, we find by 4 cups of wine on Pesach. It's also a time-bound mitzvah. And also because of the righteous women we redeemed from Mitzrayim, they also played a great role. Women play a great role in many things in our history. Therefore, because of that, the Chachamim, the rabbis, gave them certain similar responsibilities in celebrating certain mitzvot, even though they're time-bound. And even though in general they should be exempt from it, but the rabbis in certain circumstances gave them that obligation. Right. Why Shabbat? So Shabbat, even though it's a time-bound mitzvah, but first of all, women are obligated in all lo sases of the Torah. Whenever the Torah says don't do something, she's equally obligated like men. And therefore, since she's equally obligated like men, so the only thing is she's exempt from time-bound mitzvot, positive commandments to do. The only mitzvahs asay shazman ramah, positive mitzvahs that have a certain time, that's limited to a certain time, she's exempt. But by Shabbat it says zachar v'shamar b'diba echanem. When Hashem said the 10 commandments, he said the word zachar at Yom HaShabbat, and he says, remember the Shabbat, which is Kiddush, and he says, Shamar, guard the Shabbat, don't violate the Shabbat, don't do things that are forbidden on Shabbat. Since it was said in one breath, so it compared the positive commandment to the don'ts. They were united together in one breath by Hashem, and that unites that responsibility of the mitzvot, the lo saseh of Shabbat, and the asay of Shabbat. The things that you can't do on Shabbat and the things you have to do on Shabbat, they're both, whoever is obligated and not to violate the Shabbat is obligated to do those mitzvot on Shabbat that have to do with Shabbat, which would be Kiddush, Sudah Shlishit, all the Shalosh Sudot, 3 meals, all the laws of Shabbat. Women are equally obligated to men. It's not that ladies, I don't have to eat Sudah Shlishit because I'm a lady. No, you have to eat Sudah Shlishit. Now there's a halachic question. If you can't eat bread, you should try to eat bread. You should try to have, the Shulchan Aruch says, you should really have foresight and don't overdo the Shabbat lunch. I always say it's the dessert that's the problem. I say skip the dessert Shabbat lunch sometimes. You'll have appetite for, today the day is very long, you don't have such a problem. But on a short Shabbat, and you have to have, if you can't eat bread, there's other things. You know what I'm saying? If you can't eat bread for shit, then it's mezonot. You can't eat mezonot. You have meat or fish. You can't eat fish. Any fruit is the last. That's like there's an hierarchy, if that's the right word, of what's more ideal. But ideally, you're supposed to have bread. Yeah. Yes. Why do the women with the candles, Shabbat candles? Because you know, Shabbat candles are also, it's not a, it became, right. So the Shulchan Aruch explains, the way the Shulchan Aruch explains, he says he has a practical approach to why the women are the ones who light the candles. Because really, there's a mitzvah that you have to have light in your house on Shabbat. You have to have light, you shouldn't fall. It creates harmony. When people fall, they get upset, they're not happy. And really, it's an obligation on the men and the women. But the women who run the house, they take care of the needs of the house. So they were tapped with the responsibility to light the candles. Others say that because she was involved in the sin of Adam, which is by giving him to eat from the tree of life, for tree of knowledge, Eitzadat, so she caused the death of maybe it's called the Oro Shalom, maybe he was called a light, so therefore she's given to bring light. She brought death to the world, she's going to bring light to the world. They're different, but a lot of people are not aware that men also have that obligation. The lady is running late for whatever reason. She's running late from work and she's concerned. And she put all her whatever. She left all her valuables, all her muktzah in the office, and she might run a few minutes late after sunset. The man has to light the candles with a bracha. With a bracha. It could be that it could be done, but it's something to have to look into, because like you're having the agent, but doing it for you. But then the man should light with a bracha. A lady's away in the house, she has a baby, mazel tov. The husband's home for Shabbat, she's in the hospital. He lights the candle with a bracha. Say it again. No. Ashkenazim too. I hear you. Okay, no. Both such a case. And I think a lot of people, single men, don't realize. A guy is single. That's what he's going to get married. All single men are going to get married. That's it. There's some holy guys right here. They have their own apartment. They're not at home. They're not with their mom. They have to light Shabbat candles. All single men have to light Shabbat candles. I don't even know about it. Do single men know that? I don't think everyone knows that. Hashem, the rabbis wanted this. The more should be lighted. What? That's not the common, accepted way to do it. The way to do it, you should light candles. So you should buy candles, or they should get oil. They should do something. Okay, but there's a way to do it also at hotels, right? They put certain lights down. They put some tea lights. Buy tea lights. What's the big deal? Tea lights are very good. They're safe, and they last a nice amount of time. No, doesn't have to be a certain height. Doesn't have to be a certain height. You're good. They don't have to be a certain height. Just get the candles. Okay. So the Gemara says we're back on 19b2. So how do you go ahead and follow the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, the minority opinion? You're supposed to go with the majority opinion. So he said, Amalei. He tells him, Braita Ipchatani. The Braita has the opposite recording of the argument, meaning you have in the Mishnah the rabbis say A and Rabbi Eliezer say B. The Braita has a total exact opposite recording. Braita Ipchatani. Rabbi Eliezer Machshir. The Chachamim Posul. That Rabbi Eliezer says, the Chachamim say it's Posul. The Chachamim say it's not a tent. If you can't identify the roof, it's not a tent. And therefore, since it's not a tent, so if I'm going to sleep in this bed that has this slopey, this kilat chasanim, this type of bed that doesn't have a clear roof, that does not create, it's not called I'm sleeping in a tent. So I'm not a tent within a tent. Therefore, it's not considered a hefsek, it's not an interruption. And I could sleep in this type of bed in the sukkah. that has this type of canopy. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara shoots back. Okay, you have a Breita on your side, and therefore in the Breita, the rabbis are recorded as saying it's not called a tent. And therefore it's not called a tent. It wouldn't be a kosher sukkah. And if it's not a kosher sukkah, so the irony is you could sleep in that inside a sukkah. That type of covering, because it's not considered you're in a different tent. But what do you mean? The Gemara says, you leave the Mishnah and you follow a Breita. Generally, when you have a Mishnah on one side, the Mishnah, and you have a Breita on the other side, the Mishnah is more powerful than a Breita. So how do you follow the Breita over the Mishnah? The Breita says that the Chacham hold that it's not called a kosher sukkah if you're not able to see the roof. The Mishnah says it is. The Chacham say it is a kosher sukkah. So you should be concerned with the Mishnah. And if you're concerned with the Mishnah, if it's a kosher sukkah, so if you would put such a contraption within a sukkah, that means it's like a sukkah within a sukkah. You have another interruption. Or it's a tent within a sukkah, and it's not a kosher, and it creates a separation between the schach. But this tent is not schach. There's no schach on the tent. There's kilat chasanim, this bed, the chasanim bed. You're sleeping on with this canopy that goes like this. Meaning, if you have, it's not a tent.
So therefore, it doesn't have to be.
And therefore, it doesn't create a separation. Right, if you would be sleeping in such a contraption that goes like this, it's not like you were in a tent within a sukkah.
So this
You can sleep.
like this.
And the top is a fine sukkah. The sukkah that we're talking about, that the top is a beautiful sukkah.
Why are they putting this inside the spot?
No, because he had this bed. It's a bed that the Chassanim he had such a bed. There's a type of bed that some people would sleep on, and he brought this bed into the sukkah, and he slept in this bed. And the sukkah had a perfect flat roof. The perfect sukkah. So we're saying it's not a separation because it's not a tent. So the Gemara says he shoots back Amalei. So he says, Masnitin Yechidahi. The text of our Mishnah is a minority opinion. The majority opinion is like the Breita text, that the Chacham hold that such a roof is not a kosher sukkah. And it's not a kosher sukkah if you sleep in such a teepee, or you sleep in such a type of thing that doesn't have, you go into a sukkah, and the schach of the sukkah, and you can't identify the roof, it's not kosher. Since it's not kosher sukkah, it's not considered a tent. If it's not a tent, that's why I was able to sleep in that bed that had this type of covering, this canopy, because it's not a tent. And the sukkah is a perfect sukkah. Canopy, it's not a tent. It's not a tent. If it doesn't, it's not considered an interruption. It won't be a kosher sukkah. Exactly. That would be not a kosher sukkah, and therefore that's why. Therefore, it will work for me. If it's not a kosher sukkah, then I gain on the deal that I could sleep in such a bed that has such a roof, but that's not called a tent. To interrupt between me and a perfect flat schach on the top. It says Yechidahi, it's a minority opinion. The Tanya, if you made the sukkah in such a way that you can't see the roof and the walls, Rav Natan is the one who says, Rabbi Eliezer Posel, Rabbi Eliezer Posel in Lagag, and Chacham Machshirim. It's only Rav Natan that holds up. His recording, Rav Natan's recording, that says that the Chacham say it is kosher. But the majority opinion holds that the Chacham say that if you can't identify the roof, it's not a kosher sukkah. If it's not a kosher sukkah, it's not called a tent. It's not a tent if I could sleep in such a bed. Okay? Right, right. Right, very good. Great, that's a great question. So the answer, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, for some reason, he recorded this way. So that's a great question. Why did he record this way? The Mishnah is the recording of Yehuda HaNasi. He formalized the Mishnah. Now, you're asking, that's a great question. I was also thinking about it. Why would Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi go with the minority recording and not go with the recording of the majority? That's a good question. I was starting to look, see if anyone would discuss it. But the reason we have it, because that's how Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had it. I want to wish it. We have to look more into it. Stay tuned. Okay, but that's how Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi had it. Okay.
They used to bring a lot of pens to the Succah, that's why.
Generally they would, but if they might have a bed, the bed has a certain tent. You have to be careful if the bed had a tent on top and a canopy on top. That might be depending how the canopy is made, might be considered an interruption between you and the schach. So you got to be our beds. We don't have this problem. We don't have anything on top of our bed. But the bed, I was in England. I was once in England, and I went to it was a castle or something from 1,000 years ago, and they showed you the bed. And they show you the beds, how they have canopies on beds.
But what if it had like mosquito on that?
Okay, so that might depend if that would be considered a problem. Meaning a mosquito above your sukkah, your bed.
So thin, you see through it. It's just really the bugs are.
Right, so we have to. It's not made as a cover, you say, or is it made? It is made as a cover. It is made as a cover.
Specifically.
Yeah. So that would be a good question, whether that would serve as an interruption between you and the schach. That's a great question.
Yeah.
That we have to ask Posek. But do people have such things?
People do. I don't think people do. Yeah.
Probably not as much here.
Not here, but
Like,
people do have it
in
somewhere.
Tanzania, we had like mosquito nets, so I'm definitely impressed with, malaria endemic regions of the world. People sleep with netting on their beds. Maybe that's if
They have it for hiking and camping.
because like if you get bitten by one of those, you could die.
Yeah.
You get bitten by a
But I
mosquito.
think it's mostly people do it for comfort because they don't want the bugs
Exactly.
to come in.
Okay, that's definitely a good question. We have to see what the Gemara talks about that.
We could just buy a citronella candle. Buy a
You
candle.
buy the camp to move them away.
Yeah,
That's better.
that's it. Great.
But it's a good halacha question, Aaron.
Very
Okay.
interesting.